But that's not what we're really talking about here. We're talking about human rights as is defined by the international system. And for that to have any kind of teeth, or having, I should say teeth, any kind of meaning, all right, it has to be what? Agreed to by the members of the international system. And when you say agreed to, typically agreed to in some form of charter, some form of treaty, right? But, okay, can anyone sign a treaty and break it? Sure you can. Right? What are you going to do to someone when you don't break a treaty? Well, it depends. You know, it all depends on how powerful the person who challenges that individual who's broken, the country that has broken the treaty. So the point here, it isn't just signing the treaty, which basically stipulates formally that you agree to the terms of the treaty, right? But it's also understanding, kind of an awareness that emerges, an agreement. You know, for those of you, and I know that very few of you really watch science fiction, let alone read science fiction. But Professor Charles back there will know that this is what I'm talking about here is a Vulcan mind meld. You guys want to, do you know who the Vulcans are?
Who are the Vulcans?
Good question. Who are the Vulcans? Star Trek. Spock. Remember, guys? Anyway, that's the point. It's a hard group to talk to when you guys don't get into science fiction. But there was this meeting of the minds, okay? Kind of an awareness where you know, it's kind of like you have a sister, and you guys look at each other and you just agree right away, you just understand, or your best buddy, your best friend, you just look at each other and you just understand. That's what we're talking about, kind of an awareness. So it isn't just the treaty here, but it's also kind of the understanding of what that concept is, an agreement on what that concept, how that concept should be defined, and also on why some sort of rule should be adopted to protect those interests, to kind of embody that concept in some sort of legal context. Okay? So that's what we mean by meeting of the mind. And if someone violates the conditions, what to do with those individuals who violate, right? Well, we've talked about in other classes about intergovernmental organizations, right? You have these intergovernmental organizations, the World Trade Organization, the United Nations, or let's say the WTO, for example, where someone basically violates the conditions upon which they agree, the requirements that they agreed to follow when they become members of the WTO. So someone's got to go to the WTO and say, okay, this country's violating the terms of the agreement, right? So if they violate the terms of the agreement, what are you going to do about it? Do you have any teeth to do something about it? Okay? So the enforceability mechanisms are very important here. Or having a system, a process, not a system, a process in place to enforce agreements. These are all things that really, are relevant in trying to understand nation-state behavior in the international arena. At the same time, not ignoring that every nation-state has its own national interest, whether it's political, whether it's economic. Or as I like to say, I can't personally separate economics from politics from economics. Okay? Because really I think they're both they're intertwined. Okay? Now, so when we talk about this concept of people power, the promotion of human rights, the whole definition of human rights, these are difficult things to kind of talk about. So let's start off with looking at a couple of definitions. Ethics and morality. One of the best the distinctions. I mean, you can have all this criteria all you want, but let me give you the best distinction that I've ever heard. Who watches NCIS?
Ooh,
Okay? NCIS, I'm a Gibbs fan, but I'm also a Ducky fan. Guys, Ducky is the coroner who basically does the autopsies for the Navy whenever they investigate a murder. And Ducky, in I guess the 4th or 5th season, decided to broaden his competency to include psychological analysis in addition to his medical degree. And there was a question on one of the tests that he was studying there, what is the difference between ethics and morality? Okay? All right? So he was talking to his assistant about the distinction, and this is how he described it too. He referred to ethics is knowing that it's wrong to cheat on your wife. That's ethical behavior. The knowledge that it's wrong to do something. This is his example. Okay? Moral is a moral man does not cheat on his wife. Ethics is knowing that something is wrong. And morality is not doing it. And that's major. Now you can have all the different definitions you want, but really that's what that's I think because here about behavioral norms that should govern interaction. Knowing that I shouldn't do it is ethical. But the fact that I don't do it is moral. Civil society. Civil society is a term which, we talk about non-governmental organizations. When we first talked about non-governmental, I threw in that term civil society. Civil society really has become a very big term, particularly after Robert Putnam's major article called Bowling Alone. And he's had a profound impact. He's a professor at John F. Kennedy School of Government. John F. Kennedy School of Government at Harvard, professor of public policy, and he basically and this Bowling Alone was emerged from his research on behavior in Italy over like a 30-year period, where he saw that certain parts of Italy the citizens interacted well with their government, and in other parts they didn't. And he tried to understand why this kind of relationship was different across the country. And when we talk about, and so since his whole article or thesis in civil society has come out, people have agreed, people have disagreed with his research. But the point is everybody's been thinking about civil society. The problem with civil society is everybody kind of defines it differently. The traditional approach to civil society is it's that sphere within human that's place in society, okay, that's not affected by government. Okay, that is you have a choice as individuals to interact with each other, correct? Typically, who are the first people you interact with as children? Who's the first person you look at when you're born? Your mom.
No,
right?
The doctor.
Fair enough. Okay, you want to get semantical? Yes. Okay. The first person you cuddle up to is your mom, and then of course it's your grandmother who's trying to grab the baby away, and if you're lucky, maybe your dad's in there. Okay. In some places, that fathers aren't allowed to be in the hospital.
Fathers aren't allowed in?
Yeah, some places. Yeah. Anyway, but that's a whole other discussion. Okay. But my point is your family. Okay. And then, so you begin to interact with your parents, you begin to interact with your brothers, your grandparents, your immediate family. And as you grow up, you begin to interact with other groups, right? And typically what civil society literature talks about is that kind of mindset that emerges when people interact with other individuals. They're not really part of their immediate family. In other words, you choose to interact with another person by becoming a member of an organization. Okay? So what would be examples of organizations here in Kuwait? Football teams would be an example, right? You choose horse riding teams. So these are these kind of organizations that you begin to be part of, and what happens is you begin to develop this trust and reciprocity, right? And the point is that this sphere of interaction is outside the area of government. Okay? So typically, at least the way this particular chapter talks about civil society, is that part of society, what emerges. Yeah, how much time we get that? What emerges are these groups, and out of these interaction of these groups emerge these institutions that are there to protect the interests of those groups. Okay, everybody with me so far? And actually bestow a set of rights. Okay. And if you take a look at civil society literature, these as the book suggests, these kind of rights aren't just rights, but also methods of resolving violations of these rights. But they're not so in a coercive manner, but rather in a peaceful manner. Okay? And then, of course, sanctions is the last term that you need to kind of get your hands on, and that is sanctions would basically some form of punishment. And when we think of punishment, you think of your mother, father getting mad at you for doing something you were told not to. But let's say you're looking at it from a perspective of a nation state. Let's say a nation state goes against the popular wisdom of the community and chooses to basically take a position which is not the position of the majority. What kind of penalty can you bestow on that nation state? And that penalty would be that sanction. Okay? So those would be those penalties that countries have or implement against each other. Okay? And this is important here. Actually, I'm going to stop here because the problem is that we only have we have 3 minutes left. The penalty is essentially to punish someone as a retaliation for what this term here says, objectionable behavior. Well, who defines objectionable behavior? Well, people do. It's a byproduct of human action or human understanding. Okay? So this is what makes this such a hard chapter, I think, to really seriously discuss. Is in your house, whatever it's like when I tell my kid, you have to do this. It says why, and I say because. Okay, and he will respond because is not an answer. So wise guy. But the point is that it's one thing when you're in a house and you have one person with authority, okay, that says you can't do this. Your mother, your father, your grandparents, right? Maybe your older brother, older sister. Okay, depending on how pushy they are. But the point is this, is that in the international system, the system itself produces what is objectionable and what is non-objectionable behavior. Okay? And that is when you begin to behave in a rogue fashion, you go against conventional wisdom, then that could be perceived as what? Objectionable behavior. Okay? All right, we'll stop there. We'll start on Wednesday. Okay, ladies?